In this video, I will show you some of the rarest photos of the past which you have never seen before. A soldier noted his blood type and tour of duty countdown calendar on his cover during Vietnam War in 1968. Crowd watches baseball scores being posted on the New York City Sun building in 1914. Women wearing bathing suits teeing off from a block of ice on a golf course in 1926. John and Yoko waiting for the maid to make the bed so they can continue protesting the war in 1969. A stage photo with one woman playing the guitar and the other holding her sheet music in 1896. Young men hired by the Civilian Conservation Corps waiting to board the train for their work project at Glendale, California in 1933. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic as a passenger aboard an aircraft in 1928. The Ku Klux Klan giving a radio to former slaves in their 100s after their house burned down in 1948. John Charles Mayer poses for a photo in his P-51 Mustang Ace fighter jet in 1944. Otoe Yamaguchi assassinated the Japanese socialist leader Inajiro Asanuma with a samurai sword during a televised debate in 1960. Mother Ilaria protecting the Holy Trinity Orthodox Monastery in Kosovo and Medohija in 1980. A man gives candy and gum to some Japanese girls and boys on a street corner in Yokosuka, Japan in 1945. Alice Hyla Ramsey was the first woman to drive across the U.S. in 1909. Customers buying bread and snacks at a drive-through market and liquor store in Los Angeles in 1949. These siblings were photographed by South Dakota photographer John Johnson in 1890, children drinking water from Mingan-Kobar water train in 1952. Werner von Braun, the first center director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, being praised during the Apollo 11 celebration in 1969. A soldier of the 14th Infantry Battalion salutes Captain Daniel J. Callaghan in the Panama Canal Zone in 1940. Harry Hay icon and leader marches in LA Pride Parade in 1986. Two captains of the Italian Royal Army fooling around during 1870. Soviet prison in a Finnish prison camp pastime with a cigarette 1940. Accident of the Montparnasse railway station in Paris, France in 1895. People working in a vase workshop possibly in Beijing in 1902. June Jarrett wearing the Tritonia diving suit, preparing to explore the wreck of RMS Lusitania in 1935. A photo by Hans Namath from the Estremadura front during the Spanish Civil War in 1936. A U.S. soldier capturing North Korean prisoners of war in 1953. Ottoman Air Force in the Gallipoli campaign of World War I in 1915. Japanese prisoners in an Indonesian women's camp in Bolo Semarang in 1945. The Endurance being slowly crushed by ice while its crew look on helpless in Antarctica in 1915. A young Bernie Sanders being arrested for protesting during the Civil Rights Movement in 1963. British soldiers after their release from Japanese captivity in Singapore in 1945. Jeremy Corbyn being arrested outside the South African Embassy in London while protesting on grounds of race in 1984. A police officer taking fingerprints of a notorious serial killer Aileen Wuornos in 1992. Lieutenant Hugo Brock drinking wine after being awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross in 1945. Fun fact, as of today, July 2022, at age 100 he is the last living Luftwaffe ace with 81 victories to his name. A mother and her daughter falling from a fire escape 1975. A Berlin U-Bahn train running on partially collapsed tunnels in 1945. Border Patrol training at Camp Chigas in El Paso, Texas in 1930s. Three siblings photographed in 1890. Their clothing and accessories indicate a level of wealth. A blind man walks on road with poster on back saying, "Almost blind," in London in 1960s. A father and child photo to celebrate Father's Day in 1911. Painters painting the Eiffel Tower in 1932. In 1913, USPS's Parcel Post Service allowed customers to ship people who were not heavier than 11 pounds and were appropriately stamped. people busy in their life on Street of Bolton, England in 1937. A police officer adopted an abandoned baby and took care of him in her office in 1967. 5-year-old King Michael, the first taking the oath after the death of his grandfather, King Ferdinand I, in 1927. A group photo of a class in Missouri Farm School in the 1920s. Sculptor Anna Mahler, daughter of composer Gustav Mahler, in 1949. Coal miners in a pit wait to return to the surface in 1910. Statues of Stalin being removed from Budapest, Hungary in 1990. The takeoff of the first Concorde prototype in 1969. Old woman with her belongings she brought from Europe waits for custom inspector in 1948. A man photographed at Lahore railway station in 1947. Steve Porcaro from Toto with his Polyfusion modular synth in 1982. Today, you could run this full setup from a laptop. A Canon and St. Bernard at the Great St. Bernard Hospice in the 1950s. A young boy shows his gratitude to the American forces on the Western Front near the Ardennes in 1944. Interned Chinese troops in the Shanghai International Settlement Zone, China in 1937. Homosexual prisoners at the concentration camp at Sachsenhausen, Germany in 1938. Admiral William Blandy and his wife cut an Operation Crossroads mushroom cloud cake while Admiral Frank J. Lurie looks on in 1946. 20-year-old Kathy's self being driven home by Elvis Presley at Memphis, Tennessee in 1972. Outdoor speed, skating the Medju, Kazakhstan in 1990. Photo of the Slovak bullet train after its first ride from Bratislava to Prague in 1936. Lisa Adams at her stall, where she encourages passers to help the Emergency Committee for Gun Control in Manhattan in 1968. Atomic bomb little boy in a bomb pit ready to be loaded onto the B-29 bomber in 1945. Max Steinecke, the man who discovered oil in Saudi Arabia in 1938. Mata Hari fashionably visiting the Longchamp racecourse, the place to see and be seen in 1908. A German woman and her husband, both medical students, and their triplets at their kitchen table in 1984. Teenage soldier at Saigon, South Vietnam in 1968. A large dust storm descends on Hooker, Oklahoma in 1937. Soviet tanks in Prague during an invasion to crack down on reformist trends in Prague in 1968. A rare photo of the home of George Washington Hicks in Parysville, Indiana, with his wife standing outside in 1910.